Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. Very excited about today's show. We have a man who's doing all kinds of fun stuff and helping people on a grassroots level, but also a man who's got connections to the top of the wellness world. So he didn't come here to mess around. He is the medical director of the Andrew Weil Integrative Wellness Program at the Miraval Resort and Spa. He is a medical doctor, an MD. He is an author of the Integrative Wellness Rules, a simple guide to healthy living. And judging by the pictures on his website, which is drjimnicolai.com, he's pretty freaking ripped up. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here, Jonathan.
So how does one become a medical doctor, the director over at Dr. Weil's organization? He's a pretty high up there guy. Then make time to stay in great shape and write books.
I think when you understand that it doesn't have to take oodles of time or incredible amounts of effort if you know how to do it simply and efficiently. And I think you have to make time for it, but by the same token, when you know the rules of the game and you make them work for you, you can still stay that level of top performance without cooking your goose.
I got to tell you, Jim, I can definitely relate to that. I personally, and the listeners know this, I have never struggled with being overweight, but I definitely did struggle with an obsession with physical fitness, and just it consumed my entire life. And what I've been so impressed by is by practicing more of the modern techniques for healthy eating and exercise, much like you do, more focusing on quality, I'm able to get the same, if not better results that I got when I was spending 20 hours a week on the old traditional approach in literally 1/10, if not less, of the time. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, it really has. And, what's really interesting is I kind of fell in the same pattern that you did. I was an athlete growing up, and so fitness was something that I liked to do anyway. But as I got into medical school and then ultimately started having a family, I realized that 10 to 15 hours at the gym was just impossible. I couldn't do it. And so I was looking and scanning all the available stuff out there to try to figure out what might work. And as I began to kind of look at some techniques and some certain ways to do things, I found that I got into the best shape of my life with no more than about 3.5 hours of exercise total over the course of a week. Maybe 4 hours tops, but that's it. And that blew me away. It totally blew me away that I could get into that level of fitness without necessarily going overboard. And so it really got me looking at how are we doing things, and might we be missing the boat with what everybody is telling us as far as what might be the right way. And so it really got me looking to see what else is out there that might make me more efficient but still give me the best results that I could see.
And Dr. Jim, you certainly have quite a history. It seems, correct me if I'm wrong, that your entire career is predicated on what you just said, which is looking for not just doing what everyone else is doing, but rather saying what is accruing the most results, which I know sounds like common sense, but I'm sure, as you've seen, in the medical field is not always the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it really was one of the things that almost got me out of medicine, in the sense that, I really got into wanting to be a doctor to do what we all do, I think, in the service community, and that's just to really make a difference in people's lives. And I thought that being a healer and learning about healing could help me do that. And, I began to get trained in a method that really taught me a lot about disease, a lot about what was wrong with the body, but not necessarily how to make it right or how to get into balance, what Dr. Weil calls healing, which is just resilience and wholeness and balance. And so after being taught a lot, spending lots of hours and getting a sense of what was wrong with the body, I got nothing about how to make the body right. And 2 years in, and I always say I'm a first-generation doctor, $50,000 in the hole, I said, oh, shoot, and really began to say, what am I going to be able to do? And that's when I really began to look elsewhere. And one of the first books I read was a book by Andrew Weil that was called Spontaneous Healing. It changed my life. It really got me into looking at health and healing in a different sort of perspective that I was getting in my medical education. And that got me to where I am now.
And Jim, what was that key distinction, or like what was the approach you were seeing in the traditional medical curriculum, which you then completed? I mean, you have your MD, as does Dr. Weil. It's not as if you guys are out there peddling snake oil. You are board certified physicians. But
Yep.
but what led you down that road less traveled?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just the concept that disease, or learning about disease, being able to stamp out or get rid of what's wrong with you is absolutely important. You need to be able to do that to deal with how to make people healthy. But the concept of health and healing was really defined for me in medical school as the absence of disease. And that just didn't sit well. The concept that life without anything wrong doesn't necessarily feel good to me. And I could tell you that in my experience going through both my medical education, my residency program in family medicine, and even out in practice before I was trained with Dr. Weil, the concept of, I just don't feel good, or I'm just not right, or I just feel off or out of sync, or I'm just isn't a diagnosis, but it's a real thing. And, I got people to, once they came to me and said that, and I was able to say, okay, well, let's do some work to check and see if there's anything wrong with you. I would sometimes find things wrong and correct them, and they would still feel the same way. And that to me said I was missing something. Something was just not necessarily getting looked at in the right way. And as I began to look into the concept of health and healing that Dr. Weil and a number of different health practitioners and coaches and amazing folks in this line of work that I do, it began to come across that health is really working with your body to create balance, to create wholeness, to create this moving forward kind of system of living that allowed you to feel great, have all the energy you wanted or needed, look good, and react and respond to life around you in a better way. That wasn't in medical school, or I didn't get that in medical school, and I was damned if I was going to do for the rest of my life the training that I was getting and having the results that were causing me to feel so frustrated.
It's certainly a profound distinction I'm not a doctor, and a lot of people aren't doctors, and to hear that, for example, what you just said, that the type of training one receives, it's not as if it is bad. It just seems like it is maybe a training designed to ensure that everyone is at a level zero.
Right.
And if you're at negative, we'll get you to zero, but we're going to stop then. And in fact, there seems to be some sort of dogma of people who try to then take you from a zero to positive rather than just focusing on making you not negative. That's just not interesting, or that's not important. And it seems like that really didn't sit well with you.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think you're absolutely right on with how I felt. The concept of zero, where zero doesn't necessarily mean that you feel good, but we're in some way stabilizing what's wrong. We're allowing you to live with what's wrong with you, but you don't ever necessarily feel what you might have felt before, where before is this glimmer of what you were like when you were healthy, and yet because of the fact that in your line of work or in your metaphor, the sink is clogged, but we're just going to somehow manage you in a way that allows your disease to stay stable. And in so many people, I would see that it just didn't sit well. And with the tools that I had at the time, which was drugs and surgery and procedures and various different lab kinds of ways to evaluate things, I didn't have all the tools that I thought I needed to give them what I think they wanted, what I wanted to have. And I think it's that concept that I don't know if I would treat me if I walked into my office with the same kinds of complaints. And I think the biggest thing, Jonathan, that I got that I didn't get in medical school was I didn't get trained how to help people live. Lifestyle was not necessarily taught to me as a treatment strategy. And to me, it made absolute sense that if I could somehow teach people to live right, some of these diseases might fall by the wayside and get rid of all the person's needs for antidepressants or cholesterol medications or blood pressure medications. If I could somehow figure out a way for them to use lifestyle as what I call a lifestyle as the pill, to make that the treatment remedy. And I wanted desperately to get that training.
It's such a profound distinction that you make, Dr. Jim, about these two. They're not really competing. They could be complementary, but often they're positioned as competing, which is the approach of helping people to feel less bad, or the model of relief, like relief from suffering, rather, or the model of feeling good or enabling vibrant life. And of course, you need to relieve suffering and make people feel less bad before they can do the former, but it's definitely a different mindset, it seems, which is your primary focus.
Absolutely. And, I always say that, there's times for me and with my medical tools to wage war on something in your body. I mean, if you've got something in your body that we need to just blast away, we need to be able to do that. But once war is done, how do we then create a sense of peace where not only is there no problem, but there's also, like what you said, this sense of feeling good, vibrant, alive, looking forward, passionate. That, to me, is health. And anything that interferes with that or causes a problem with that happening, to me, is dis-ease. And the challenge is that we have a skewed kind of version. What I was getting with my training with Dr. Weil was this idea that you could do both. And not only could you do both, but you could save war and waging war for those way intense, way down the road kinds of problems. But when you taught people how to live better or effectively, that could be done so much more readily and so much more effectively, and it could be done right now. And that's the thing that I wanted to spend more time with people on, as opposed to saying, hey, I've got 10 minutes with you. Let's just have you take an antibiotic or a medicine, and I'll see you back in 6 months.
Dr. Jim, the metaphor of war on the body, as painful as it is to hear, I think hits the nail on the head, because we see that, like, when you take on that model, you realize it's fundamentally unsustainable. Like, you cannot live your life in a battle, or you can, but maybe that's not really living, in a battle against your body. And I feel like that is even sometimes the way we approach food. People sometimes say, oh, well, healthy eating is such drudgery and blah, blah, blah. Oftentimes those people have a misunderstanding of what healthy eating is. But if you're looking in the refrigerator for something that is horribly unhealthy, oftentimes you're doing that to feel less bad.
Yes.
Like you feel bad, and because you feel bad, you're trying to get relief. And if you felt good, you wouldn't need relief. Like, if you can fix that system, if you can stop waging war, a lot of these things that seem so enjoyable really aren't. They're a way you give yourself temporary relief, and if you don't need that relief, then you don't need those things anymore. What do you think? Absolutely. And I think it's even more to the fact of when you're constantly waging war, there's an emptiness. There's this feeling that I don't have something. I don't know what it is, but it just isn't with me. And I'm going to keep going hard, but then there's this feeling of struggle and challenge, and I just can't do this, but I have to. Like you said, that is in some ways not having that missing piece or that hole that is filled when you have vitality. I mean, it's, the concept of just getting up and being happy, or actually looking forward to breakfast when you know what breakfast is going to make you feel like, and you're anticipating what it's going to make you feel like, so you're looking for it as opposed to getting a fix. I mean, I think that
whether it's a meditation practice, whether it's a regimen of various things that you do regularly to keep you healthy, it makes you look forward to them. And when you don't have them, that's when you feel off. And so to me, it's absolutely this idea of letting go of that mentality, or using it only when we need to, when the sink is clogged. But ultimately, what we have to be able to do is understand a way to live that's in flow and fluid harmony with the world around us that we dovetail into.
And Jim, I think like the reason the work you're doing, Dr. Weil is doing, so many others are doing, is so important is because I think a lot of people do not understand that state is possible or realistic for them, because this is a silly, and I'm going to go maybe a little bit off the ranch here, but here's just an example. Like, if someone is in a completely wonderful relationship with another person, like it's their partner, they just could not imagine spending a moment without that person. They've been together for years. It's just literally their other half.
Yep.
If someone were to come to them and say, like, isn't it really hard not to cheat on your partner? Like, how do you avoid just sleeping around? It's so enjoyable to do that. The person who is in that wonderful relationship literally does not, like those two people, it's like they cannot see on the same plane, because until you understand what it feels like to have that kind of a relationship with another person, you couldn't possibly understand how, no, it's actually not a struggle. It's actually a delight not to do those things. And it seems like what you teach people is how to have that kind of relationship with yourself. And when you have that, this idea of doing damage to yourself is not a relief, and it's not hard to avoid it, because why would you want to do that in the first place?
Right. Or, sometimes, and I think along those lines, sometimes life presents all kinds of things, and to not go into that metaphor, but what you begin to discover is when you do it wrong, when you make a bad choice, because of the fact that you're within your body and you realize what it feels like to feel so good, you suddenly realize what little tiny imbalances feel like, and you discover, wow, I'm not doing that again, or I'm going right back to square one to start right back on my program. So that it doesn't mean that I have to be perfect, but when I am living in this right relationship, I can discover wow, I made a bad choice, or this wasn't really available to me, but whoa, it made me feel so bad, and I realize now why I don't do this on a regular basis. I see that so many times when either I institute a treatment plan or people come to Miraval, where they begin to feel differently, and then as they add life back, they suddenly realize, oh, this doesn't feel so good. So you can begin to understand just what out of balance feels like, because you've suddenly got an alternative that is so much more appealing.
And just having that alternative is so empowering, because literally if you don't know what it feels like, then yes, it seems very like, why wouldn't you just drink that soda? It tastes good right now. But if you knew how good you could feel for the other 99.9% of the day once you were well, if you avoided those kinds of things, it's not hard. Just like it's not hard to avoid slamming your hand in the door, because you're like, well, no, I know what it feels like to not slam my hand in the door, but you have to have something to compare it to, right? Absolutely.
And I think giving people tastes, I think, one of the things that I have found to be so powerful is, and this is taught by Dr. Weil, whether it's in integrative medicine, it's a principle of what we talk about with integrative medicine on so many different levels, not necessarily just the physical level, but when I can be a model for other individuals, and I can talk with them with the same passion and vibrancy that might suggest to them that I have something that they don't. What I can then do is give them a hope that it's available, especially if I can let them know that I'm not a superstar or some crazy person that's doing it especially above anybody else. When I can make people understand that I am real and I have the same issues. I have 3 children. They are 13, 8, and 6. They make my life full and wonderful, but damn busy. And so life can sometimes just get really challenging as I get that across to people, but yet I can still be this healthy, vibrant individual. And then a model for them, what they then sometimes do is say, what are you doing? Let me just begin to figure out how I can model some people that are getting results. And just, even if I don't know if I can do it, let me just have a little hope and give it a try for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months. Just give me, let's try it for a season. It's one of the things I talk about in the book. What I often tell people is do this in threes, 3 weeks, then 3 months, or in 3-week intervals until we give you a season to just see how this feels. Put your head down, give yourself a chance, and see if you feel any differently. If you do, then maybe we're on to something.
Jim, that is such a powerful distinction, and I'm curious if this is along the same lines. And that's, I've heard people who represent what you just described. For example, an individual, a mother or father, many children, also has a busy professional life and is also able to maintain a state of vibrancy. And people will say to that person, let's say in this example, her name is Mary. Mary, how are you able to have time to eat healthfully and to stay active with all that you have going on? And Mary actually says, well, the reason I'm able to have all of that other stuff going on at the level that I do is because,
absolutely,
not in spite of, but
absolutely,
because I do those other things. That's a flip that can really be transformative.
Without a doubt, where what we then do is say, and so as a result of that, what is a simple ritual that we can begin today, that we can start? A healthy breakfast that's just different than your cereal or your oatmeal, or a way to fill you up both spiritually and emotionally as well as physically, that we start today that begins to give you an ability to access the things that you might not necessarily feel that you have, simply because of the fact that you don't know the rituals or you aren't necessarily in the routines. And as we begin to describe that it's the routines that get us where we are, then that might give people a sliver of hope. I've come across a quote that just floors me. I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's by Aristotle, and he says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, it's a series of habits." And it's those habits that I'm trying to instill. It's lifestyle as a pill. What living techniques can we do where I'm all about, and the book is all about, how can we make it quick and dirty? It doesn't have to be complex. How can we be able to start the process rolling so you can begin to see some momentum just because we both in the door and you're going through it?
And I think by doing those quick and dirty, but scientifically backed, which is always the beautiful thing. It's just not random stuff, which is always
right.
Great.
No, right, absolutely.
But and that is important. Is it gives also this, like as you've seen and I've seen personally, you can be in great shape, not spending 20 hours a week exercising when you have the tools and the techniques necessary. And it also starts to get into, you mentioned Aristotle. There's another concept in Greek culture, the difference between two different kinds of times. There's chronos time, which is linear time or just quantity of time, and kairos time, which is more the quality of time. And I think what a lot of people find is once you're actually well, like, yes, you might spend an additional hour a day on wellness. But if, let's say your job, just because it's an easy example, is to you're at an ad agency and you need to do creative work. If your job is to come up with a good idea, and you come up with that good idea in 1 hour because your brain is functioning, you can go home. Like, you came up with your good idea. Or maybe just even in relationships, think about how much time it takes when we have a negative interaction with a person because we're in a bad mood. So if we weren't in a bad mood, how much time would we save? So it's almost like we can make the pie bigger in terms of time with wellness. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's exactly it. And And not only that, and you talked about the whole idea of one idea, when you're vibrant, alive, and you love what you do because of all of that you're doing, one idea turns into 3 or 5, or you begin to say, whoa, this could really branch off. So it's just about efficiency, and it's that makes it fun. I don't know about you, but every day is an adventure. I mean, it's awesome because you never know what's going to come because it's always going to be something new. And as you have that vitality, you begin to start looking for these little synchronicities and these little sort of relationships and meetings and how people come to interact in your life that makes it juice-filled, And so in that regard, it's because of the fact that you're efficient and it makes you want to keep going, even though you might be working a little harder or a little bit longer. You're feeling good doing it because you're living your truth. You feel good about it. I often say that wellness is a journey as opposed to health as a destination, where wellness might not necessarily even be that you've got health yet. But when you're doing a series of tools and it's working and you know that you're on the right track, you suddenly begin to get a sense of that hope and that energy and that vibrancy that even though you haven't gotten it yet, you feel something, and that's a huge deal.
Well, Dr. Jim, I think hopefully if folks are even a slight amount of excited as I am based on our conversation so far, they're chomping at the bit. They're saying, well, what are some of the things I can do besides, eating smarter, exercising smarter? They kind of get that. What are some things you've seen, Dr. Jim? And certainly you have folks, if you get a chance to check out Dr. Jim's book, which is called Integrative Wellness Rules, A Simple Guide to Healthy Living. It's literally a cornucopia of these quick and dirty things you can do, which is wonderful. But Jim, would you be willing to share maybe 3 of your favorite that are not as obvious with the listeners that they could start today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's really interesting, and I love what you said because it's really important to understand, a lot of what I do has some really good grounded scientific basis on it. So it's one of the things that you want to understand, where dirty doesn't necessarily mean all over the place or willy-nilly. What dirty means is it's in some ways simple, effective, doable, and you might have to trick yourself to get it done or somehow feel your way around it to make it happen. But once it happens, it works for you. So from that perspective, there's some pretty amazing stuff outside of the realm of just physical stuff, whether it's exercise or eating right. Surprisingly, there's some amazing research on the power of positive thinking or the power of gratitude. There's some great studies that have been done that have found that any gratitude exercises, some of them have been talked about, where just keeping a gratitude journal, as simple as this, Jonathan, writing down 5 things that you're grateful for once weekly for 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. The study was done, and it was done in California. A guy by the name of Robert Emmons did it. And basically he said, let's do this in relationship to other kinds of ways of journaling, writing down to-do lists, what have you, and let's just see if gratitude makes a difference. And they found that over 12 weeks of time, that writing down a gratitude journal made 3 things happen. It made you feel better about yourself, you exercised more, and you went to the doctor less. How simple is that, to just keep a focus on what you're thankful for on a regular basis, even if it's just once a week? So part of what I do daily is periodically I'll keep a gratitude journal, but daily I do gratitude exercises on a walking meditation. So after my workout at the gym, which is anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes, I'll go on a 15-minute at most walk with my dog. And we walk around our neighborhood, and I teach a particular form of meditation called breath walking, which basically just syncs a 4-in, 4-out count with your stride. And I do that while I'm walking my dog, and as I do that periodically, I'll do a series of gratitude meditations just in that rhythm, counting out 4-in and 4-out as I'm walking, just focus on thankfulness, what I'm grateful for, what I'm appreciative of. Those 2 exercises, I think, are the 2 basic parts that I do as I give the day to me first, so that I can fill up knowing that my exercise is met and I'm on my way to breakfast. I love gratitude, and I love finding some way to get what we call mindful, which just simply is shut off your head. Get your to-do list, get your back history out of your head, and just simply be without judgment. And finding any way to make that happen, whether it's through meditations that are sitting, things like body scans at nighttime. But I love walking because I'm a doer and an active person. But by walking and doing gratitude work, I think those two have been unbelievably powerful. And as a third, I oftentimes talk about this. I'm a spiritual person where the spirituality that I have is just having some sense of connection with something bigger than you, whether it's a religious practice, which I certainly have but don't really talk to or espouse to, finding some way to give your life to a bigger purpose, to a service kind of way to go. And I simply offer up a quick prayer that's 4 things. Help me be blessed, allow me to be of service, allow me to be protected, and allow me to be guided. And so simply just offering a prayer on a regular basis to whatever it is that I somehow feel connected with. I have a certain idea about what that is in my mind, but you don't have to have it. It could be nature or it could be something else. But on a simple basis, giving your day to something bigger, allowing you to be thankful, and allowing your mind to turn off from your to-do list and getting into now time, I think are 3 things that could serve you well.
Certainly, we ensure that we get quality exercise with our body, and we ensure that we take quality food into our mouth. And it seems like what you're saying makes obvious sense as a compliment, and that's make sure we're putting quality stuff into our mind.
Absolutely. And feeling connected to something bigger allows that hole to sometimes be filled when you're taking everything else into account, but you still feel a little bit not right. I think that's where wholeness, when we're talking about health, is more than just the physical. It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual. As you attend to those things, that's really when the vitality and the vibrance steps up.
Dr. Jim, I love it. Well, certainly you are keeping yourself busy. You've got your book, Integrative Wellness Rules. You're the director of integrative medicine at the Minerval Resort and Spa. You've got your work with Dr. Weil, and folks can learn more about you at drjimnicolai.com. But what's next for you? What's next in this quest to be the change you want to see in the world?
Yeah, it's funny. I think part of what I see is I think the message just continues to need to come out, and not just from a point of view of a TV show or trying to navigate through all the health material. I think what I would love to do is, the more rules are out there, the more there are to share. And so I really see myself as an archaeologist for quick and dirty health tips. So part of what I would love to do is keep spreading that message. I'd love to. There may be a second book in me that speaks to that and really continues to try to make that happen. I would love to tell you that my life as a dad continues to grow, and as a father and a husband, that will keep me continuously busy. And in all honesty, I have to tell you, from your point of view, I love the work that you're doing, and the more that I think we can spread this message of health as a way to be simple, doesn't have to be complex, I think that there's plenty for us to do in the future.
Well, certainly it's not a shrinking market in any sense of the word.
True
Dr.
that,
Jim,
that's for sure.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I certainly look forward to, collectively all, hopefully, and listeners you included, dedicating our lives to the very noble purpose and to the very big cause, in addition to all the other noble purposes we have in our lives, of addressing this epidemic, which is literally something the world has never seen before. So if for no other reason, being that example, empowering others, you just might save someone else's life in addition to your own. And that's pretty freaking motivational in my book.
Absolutely, man. Right on.
Well, Dr. Jim, thank you so much. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. Again, Dr. Jim Nicolai is his name. His website is the exact same. And remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Talk with you soon.
Wait, don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast and if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff, like how to help your kids go sane and just great community content.
And just one last thing before you go, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes and up onto Amazon.com and leaving us a review, and then going over to Facebook and liking us, we would hugely appreciate it.